Hi everyone, this is BritSimon. So I want to talk to you about this new form, which is the DS-5540. This form is being used already to give to interviewed selectees, um, for them to fill out after the interview. Now you can actually take this to the interview, and you can have it pre-filled out in readiness, and I suggest you actually do that. So you can go ahead and get this form from the website here that I'm showing, and you'll be able to download and complete that form. But I need to explain a little bit about two things. Like, number one, what's this new form about? And number two, how to fill out the form. If I try and tackle both those subjects in one video, it's going to be a very long video. And so I think I'm going to break this down into the two parts. This video is going to be going through the form itself. I won't give an awful lot of explanation as to the finite details of the form and how it's used, etc. I'll do that in a separate video. But I may touch on some of the aspects of the form as I go through. But so let me go through this form with you and help you at least with the completion of this form if you've already been asked to provide this form at a consular interview. So firstly, for applicants who are going through an adjustment of status process, they will find that they're being asked to complete a different form to this, the I-944. And so that I-944 form takes the place of this form, DS-5540, for adjustment of status. So if you're doing adjustment of status, you need a different form, I-944. If you're interviewing at an embassy outside of the USA, then you're doing consular processing, and you'll fill in this form, DS-5540. And I think we're going to see more and more, we're going to see this form being used. It may not be used by every embassy immediately, but it could be. Every embassy could ask applicants to fill this form out. And if they ask you at the interview to fill this form out, is obviously there's going to be a delay while you fill the form out and return it to them, and they assess the form. And so by going to the interview with this pre-filled out, you're going to save yourself some time. So I suggest you do that. Right, so we're in the form, and I'm going to go through each section here. So obviously your family name, given name, and middle name. Now I've explained names before. The family name or last name is the same as the surname. So if you're Elvis Presley, Elvis is your first name or given name, and Presley is your family name. In the USA and some other countries, many other countries, everybody in the family would share that name. So you'd have Elvis Presley and Mrs. Jane Presley, and the kids would be Johnny Presley and Mary Presley or whatever. But everybody would have that family name, right? And in some countries, I know that's different, but this is your family name or last name or surname. All three of those terms mean the same thing, right? Your given name is your first name. That's how people know you generally. And your middle name is the names in between the given name and the last name, right? It's any other names you have. You may have more than one. You may have multiple middle names, right? So fit in what you can fit in. If there's not enough space, then you can omit the name at this point, the other parts of the name. Date of birth, you fill this in a month, day, year format, right? Which is the American way of filling out dates. So month, day, year. Make sure you get that right, please. Then, simple question, have you been to the United States before? If you haven't been to the United States before, then things are going to be a bit easier throughout the form. But if you have, fill that in. Obviously, this form, like every other form, you've got to be extremely honest and transparent in your answers. You must not, I mean, it's just a very simple question and you answer it honestly. And all of the questions are going to be like that. Simple questions that you answer honestly. Okay, so choose your correct answer for that. Have you been to the US before? Doesn't say how, doesn't ask anything about a visa at this point, doesn't ask anything. It's just a simple, have you been to the United States before? Then the next question, part two, is about healthcare coverage. Now, this is really interesting. The requirement for new immigrants to have healthcare coverage is enjoined at the moment. It's been blocked by a court. And so, in a sense, they shouldn't be asking anything about this, but nevertheless, the form has it included, right? So you can't complain about the fact that it's enjoined right now to the CO. Really, what you've got to do is just go ahead and fill this information in. You're not in a position where you have many rights at this point. The application for a green card is a privilege. It's not a right. You don't have the right to a green card, and you're not in the United States, so you have limited sort of rights, if you like. In terms of what you can and can't do, and they can ask you to fill in a piece of paper. That doesn't mean that they can, at the moment, they can't judge a case solely on the health insurance. But it could be that block by the court could be removed at any time, and so you need to think carefully and answer this section correctly, so that if that healthcare insurance requirement becomes effective, then your answers on here won't catch you out, right? So, do you currently have health insurance coverage in the USA? For the vast majority of you, that will be a no, right? If you were to answer yes, you would be expected to put the insurance policy and attach that to the form, right? So most of you, without exception, are going to be saying, no, you don't have insurance. It would be quite weird. Why would you have health insurance in the USA if you don't live there? So you say no, typically. And then this question is important. Will you be covered by health insurance in the USA within 30 days of your entry to the United States? As I mentioned earlier, realistically, this answer shouldn't matter, but it does in case that requirement becomes important. So I strongly suggest you accept your responsibility and you commit to taking insurance within 30 days and click the form yes. This is a promise you're making. You're promising to get insurance within 30 days. Now everyone knows that plans can change, but you must take on this responsibility with with the right frame of mind, right? Don't just click yes, planning to not do that, right? You should plan to do that. You should have a realistic plan to obtain health insurance, right? And then if you answer yes, identify the specific health insurance plan and date coverage will begin. Okay. So you need to give them some specifics. You don't have to, the date will be, you could put date of entry, to be determined, or date of entry will cover the date. But the specific health insurance plan, they're really asking if you've done any research and trying to make sure that you understand how expensive health insurance is in this country. So you could go through an exchange and obtain health insurance that way, but those policies are quite expensive for a new immigrant. And realistically, until you're earning local wages so that you've got the right amount of wages to pay for these new expenses, you're probably going to be flabbergasted at the cost of a health plan in this country. To give you an idea, I think I've probably mentioned this on my videos before. My own health insurance costs my company $24,000 a year, of which I pay a few $100s per month out of my pocket, and that health insurance policy covers myself and my wife and daughter, right? My family. So it's expensive to have health insurance here. That's certain. Now, There is a link on my website, and I'll put the link down below, where I've described health insurance for new immigrants, and I have a connection. I'm an affiliate of a company that provides health insurance. This is a company that I've gone to before, and they have, pretty good policies. And I would suggest you have a look at these policies and possibly, obtain one of these policies when you come to the States. It's really your choice. You do what you want. Doesn't really matter to me one way or the other. I get a very, very small commission, on each policy, but it's a couple of bucks. I mean, it's nothing significant. So, I'm not telling you to buy these policies because I'm an affiliate, but by all means, you can look at these policies and see if you can get something better. But these are pretty good. So when you come into this website, come to this section that says insurance plans. Always go into the immigrant insurance because that's what you're going to need to look at. And you can answer a few questions, and I prefer the comprehensive plans, but you can see all of them. If I show you the Patriot America plan, for example, each of the plans here, this is one plan, this is another plan, different providers. Visitors coverage are like a broker, so they can offer different types of plans with different providers. And so they have a number of suggested plans here. Each of them have slight sort of difficulties in terms of who they cover. So, for example, this first plan, which is a very good plan, I know of this plan, is not available to citizens of Botswana, Gambia, Ghana, Niger, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone. Okay, so that will affect some people. So there are other plans. I saw one earlier that is also a pretty good plan, this Diplomat American plan, but it's not available to citizens of Australia and Iran. Okay, so you'll need to bear that in mind. If you were from Australia and Iran, you couldn't choose this one, but you could choose the first. And if you were from these countries, you couldn't choose this first one, but you could choose the last one that appears there, the Diplomat America. And there are some other ones. Some of them are not available in certain states, and clearly you need to be careful of those if you're going to those states. Again, another plan here that has exclusions by country. Same thing here. Not available for following destination countries: Antarctica, Cuba, Iran. Amazing. So, but it's not available for people who are going to live in these states. You can see here. So you can look at this and go through and figure out which sort of plan you would plan to get. Go through the process and get a quote from here and screen print the quote that you get. You don't have to buy the policy. You just are going to screen print the quote so that you can then take to the interview with you, the DS-5540, and you can show that you've done some basic research on some temporary cover plans. These plans are designed to bridge the gap between when you arrive as a new immigrant and when you get proper health care, which is an ACA type health care or Obamacare type healthcare plan available from the exchanges. So it's a sort of something to use temporarily for a month or 2 months or 3 months until you get onto a more effective plan. Okay, so these plans will keep you protected in a disaster scenario, but they're not great for everyday medical expenses and everyday treatments, such as just going to the doctor and getting your prescriptions. Okay, so get something more effective for that as soon as you can, but obviously you'll need to have a job by that time and you'll need to be earning, and quite often when you take employment, those jobs come with healthcare plans. Okay, so back to the form. So I'm suggesting then that you go through that website that I just showed you and list here the name of the specific health insurance plan. So for example, you would say Patriot America Plus, and you would say, Patriot America Plus, date to be decided, within the 30 days of entry, right? So that would satisfy the requirement, and you're showing that you have a sensible plan, that you've done some investigation. Okay, moving on in the form, part 3, your household size. you're listing all of the people in your household, right? And these are the people that your derivatives, your dependents, and whether that person's working or not. You might have a working age child that's moving with you, etc. But the household, so this is one form per household, effectively. The household meaning typically a family unit of husband and wife, and the children can all be added on this part here, right? So this is the first person is you. Relationship to you is self. The next person would be your spouse. Relationship to you is your spouse or wife or husband, whatever you put there, and then children. There's only space for 3 children. There's probably going to be an ability to attach some additional children on a separate piece of paper if you need to do that, and you would just extend the form for that. So go through that section, put in the age of the person, relationship, current job if they're working. They won't be citizens. Obviously, we're talking about new immigrants, so you would put no on that. Typically, you might have a citizen child. Say yes if that's the case. And then something about whether that person is already in the US and receiving public benefit. Okay. So answer these questions honestly, right? Then the form talks about your assets, resources, and financial status. So for each year, so for 2019, let's say, did you file a federal tax return? No, is probably going to be your answer. Gross income in US dollars. So for 2019, whatever is your income. For 2018, whatever is your income. Go backwards that way, right? And it's asking for all of those from the last 3 years. And if you're submitting it for the last 3 years, you're listing just the federal tax returns. Essentially, this is about a federal tax return. You can say federal tax year and list the income, but no, you didn't file a return. That's okay if you were not in the States. Now, if you were in the States and you had you had you had income in the States and you didn't file a federal tax return, that in itself would be a problem. So one of the deals is, as an immigrant, you have to file your federal tax returns once you come here as an immigrant. But clearly, they want to know that you've played by the rules. If you've lived in the USA, and you were on, you were on some sort of job that required you to fill in a federal tax return, that you have done that, right? So that's what this section is trying to get to. So list out the years and list out your income and transfer that to dollars. So if you earned money abroad in your home country, still list out the years and show the income that you had. But obviously, it's not going to be anything like the income that you would have in the USA. So then question 7 here is, did you work in the USA for the last 3 years but did not file a federal tax return? Okay, that's a landmine, that question. If you say yes, then they're asking for an explanation. Excuse me. Please be clear. I mean, you have to tell the truth. So please be clear and truthful in this answer. But understand that if you did work in the USA but you did not file a tax return, yeah, you may run into problems. Okay, so your current yearly compensation in US dollars. This is section 8 now. Just detail whatever that is. If you're unemployed, then you would put nil, right? If you are a business owner, then you would put your income that you derive from the business, and so on. So whatever the income is, transfer that into a US dollar amount, and put that in section 8A. In 8B, if you currently have a job awaiting your arrival in the USA, who is the employer and what's the yearly compensation in US dollars? Okay, so again, be careful with this question. Don't lie, for goodness sake. If you have a job offer waiting for you because you've got some sort of contacts in the USA and it's really, truly what you're planning to do, then yes, list it here. But don't list because you've got some friend who says, "Oh, just put down you're going to work for me and I'll pay you 50,000 a year or whatever." Don't do that. If unless this is a solid, real job offer, don't get into a lie because whatever you write down here, they're free to question you about later, and even now. And if you are just lying on the form to try and get through the interview, they're going to catch you out. All right, so don't dig a big mess with lying on these forms, please. Okay, question 8C. List below any income not listed above that you will continue to receive after your arrival in the USA. For example, rent, stock, dividends, foreign pension, child support. Okay, child support is going to be possibly something that you'll continue to receive. If you have, let's say you're a web designer and you maintain websites for other people, you may continue to receive that income after you've arrived in the USA. Could be things like that. Stock income, rental income. If you own a property and you're going to rent that out, list it there. Okay, that's all. The sort of thing that they might want to know about. But again, don't make stuff up. Don't lie. Make sure that that you're prepared to provide evidence if asked about that. Okay. And then you can put the types of income here. This 8C, this types of income, as far as I can see, is to do with that. So type of income would be, rent income, 2,000 a month, whatever it is. Do you receive it monthly or annually? And you'd put that down there. This section number 9 is assets available to you. So cash assets are checking and savings accounts, and then non-cash assets includes equity in real estate, annuities, securities, etc. List all of those down here if you have any of those assets. You may, for example, you could, if you own your cars, you could list your cars. I mean, they're not really an asset, but they may be something that are valuable enough that if you sell, it may help you with your expenses moving to the USA. If you own gold, there are some countries around the world where people like to invest in gold. Okay, list that out and have a valuation available for that. You can go through that process as well if you want, but again, like I've said before, don't lie about anything here. Don't try and make things seem better than they are. Be honest here, right? And then list your liabilities and or debts in the table below. Again, a full listing of liabilities you have, loans you may have outstanding, things that you plan to pay off when you emigrate. If you have listed a property, an asset as a property, and you have a mortgage, that would be down here, right? The liability or the debt would be the mortgage. So let's say you've got a property worth, I don't know, $200,000, but you've got a mortgage of $100,000. You're going to have a property here. Location of the asset will be the address or at least the town or city. And then the amount of the value would be 200,000 here. And then down here would be mortgage on the property, which you refer to by the location, property in, whatever location that is. And you've got 100,000 mortgage, whatever that might be. Okay. So then there's a section here on whether you've received public benefits or not. Okay, so I've created a video previously about this. There has been an expansion of what is considered to be a public benefit or a public assistance. And so they've actually listed out here the things that they care about. So you can read this and see if you've ever received any of these things, right? Now, if you've never been in the USA, this is a no-brainer. You could say, you could answer this question and say, no, you haven't had any of those, never been in the USA, you couldn't have used any of these public benefits, right? Pretty easy if you've never been to the USA. If you have been to the USA and you have used any of these types of benefits, then you need to list that out, right? So, and it says here, have you or any of the individuals applying with you covered by this form, requested or received public benefits, requested or received, right? So you asked for a benefit or you received the benefit. And, so list that out, right? Again, honesty is important here. And you ask for that benefit from a US federal, state, or tribal government entity on or after February 24, 2020. So if you were here in 2018 and you used public, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, which is food stamps, I think. So yeah, that's food stamps. So if you used food stamps, if it was in the past before February 24th, 2020, you don't need to list it. You don't have to say yes to that. If, on the other hand, you've been here since February 24th, 2020, and you're looking at this later, then you would list out what you've received. So this is only applying from February 24th, 2020 onwards. Right? If you happen to be, here we are, I'm talking about this in February of 2020. It's extremely unlikely that any of you are having your interview outside of the USA and have public benefit assistance in the USA since the date of this new policy, right? So almost all of you will be able to click no in this box here, but as time goes on, that obviously is going to get a little bit different, right? So if you're listening to this video in 2022, the policy has already been in place for a couple of years. Maybe you need to list something out, and the policy states an accumulation of months of using a particular benefit. Each month on each type of benefit adds towards a 12-month in 36 months target or limit. So if you had 2 or 3 different types of benefits all at the same time, all for 6 months, then you might have accumulated, let's say, 18 months use of the benefit. Let's say there's 3 benefits for 6 months each. That's 18 months use of the benefit. That means you will have fallen foul of this regulation, but that needs to have been after February 24, 2020, right? So, as we sit today, that shouldn't be an issue for any of you. All right, so most of you will be able to click no. If you click yes, if yes is the honest answer, then you need to fill out those sections here. Again, question 12 is the same thing. If you or the family received a public benefit were you or your family members exempt from public charge during that period, that means if you're a refugee, essentially. So click that there. And the explanation, yes, you were exempt because you were a refugee in this country, not a refugee in some other country from a third country. That means a refugee accepted by the USA and living in the USA. So that's what that means. And then, are you likely to request any of the benefits described in question 11 in the future from any government state? Well, you need to come to the USA if you're an immigrant these days, and you can see how the political climate is changing. And if Trump stays around, you need to come with your eyes open wide. You need to be able to pay for your own expenses. America is a land of opportunity, but it's not a land of sort of public handouts. Those handouts are paid for by taxpayers, people who are already here paying tax. They come from what's called the public purse, meaning they come from public money meaning taxpayers, right? So why should Americans living here pay for, food stamps or whatever other public assistance programs for you as a new immigrant? They shouldn't. And, I'm sorry, but that's just not the way America works. And, you need to know that. So you need to come here with a plan to be self-supporting. And if you need money, you get extra jobs, right? You do additional work. There are plenty of opportunities here. So, you have to come with that mindset, right? Do not move to an area where you can't find employment. Uh, you know, come here with a realistic mindset of what jobs you're going to do and how much money you're going to earn from those jobs, and be prepared to pay for your expenses. If you have a family, you need to be able to cover the expenses of the family, and sometimes that might mean taking a second or even a third job, and working extremely hard. And that is how immigrants have made it in the USA for, probably 100 years. So, so new immigrants have a tough beginning, and the promise is not one of an easy life. The promise is one of opportunity to be able to get a better life from wherever you are. But the opportunity comes with the responsibility on yourself to actually make your own way. Okay. So when you're filling in this form, if you say, "Are you likely to request or receive?" and you click yes here, you'll be causing yourself a problem. And you should be able to click no because you honestly have a plan to come here and not accept public assistance. Okay, that should be your plan, right? So I'm the world's most understanding person to new immigrants. I know how hard it is. I would happily help new immigrants, etc. But new immigrants have to come here with the idea of helping themselves, right? So that's just the way it is. Have you ever received a fee waiver when applying for immigration benefit from USCIS? Again, that's a very particular question. If it's true for you, you will know it. Um, and it generally won't be true for you, so almost all of you will click no. If you have had a waiver, a fee waiver, then you would list it here, right? Okay, now they're going to ask some questions about your education and skills. Have you graduated high school or earned a high school equivalent diploma? Again, this is based on the person filling in the form. This should be the principal selectee filling in the form. Um, and for on the behalf of the derivatives, if you're a DV lottery candidate, that's the way it will work, right? And for other types of immigrants, the rules will be slightly different, but one person is going to fill in the form on behalf of all of the people on the form. And so this is really about you and your skills, your education, your skills. So have you had a high school, have you graduated high school or earned high school equivalent diploma? If you're in the DV lottery, you should all be able to list, yes. If you're listing no, it's because you're qualified by work experience. So you can list no here if that's the accurate answer. And then if you list no, you give the highest grade completed, etc. If you answer yes, you might also add here that you've got a Bachelor of Science, or a Master's or whatever it is. You can put that in here as well. Do you have any occupational skills? If yes, you would provide the information below, right? This is the occupational section here, 16A and B. So this would be things like plumbing, electrician, car mechanics. Perhaps you've got a certificate that allows you to do those things. It could also be things like Microsoft certified networking certificate, any of those things that help. And if they're not certifications, they might be licenses. A license meaning like a medical practitioner's license for a doctor, or a pilot's license, or a CPA license if you're an accountant, those sort of things. So licenses would be in here. And occupational skills, again, if you've got some sort of skilled employment, you would list that here, and you would say what sort of skill sets you have. Who issued the license, if there was a license, license number, and renewal date, etc. So list out, a couple of those. Don't go crazy with these. You don't have to list every single, time that you got a 100 meters swimming badge when you were a kid. We're talking about, the important critical licenses or certifications you have for your occupation, for the work that you intend to do in the USA, right? And or what you've done now. Okay, so answer those 16A, B, and C, the same question, just answer those. Then did you use a translator? So if somebody helped you translate this for this form, you would give their details here. And a preparer, same thing. If somebody helped you complete the form, you would give their details. Now, my video here doesn't, is probably helping you prepare the form, but I'm not the preparer, right? You're the person that's preparing your own form, or you've had help where somebody else has physically typed in or written in the information here. Okay, additional information, and it makes the point here, if further space is required, attach additional sheets, right? So if you have, and I mentioned this earlier, if you have more children than there are space to list here, attach an additional sheet and say part 3, and make sure you give the same columns, the same pieces of data that they're looking for the additional children, right? So go through and do that. So that's what that question is, or that's what that part 8 note is about. And then sign the form, print your name. So you sign here with your signature, you print the name, so that's the full name, printed meaning written out clearly so that someone can read it, as opposed to a signature which often is illegible, and the date. And again, put the date in American format, month, day, year, right? So that's it for the form. That's how you fill the form out. There's a significant amount of information we need to discuss about why this form is being introduced and what it means, but at least for filling out the form, that I hope will help you go through the form and take away some of the fear of filling in the form. There is, by the way, all the forms have this information. So whether you fill in the DS-260 or the I-134 or whatever form it is, they always have something like this. So it's got a control number, which is a control number about the form, not about you, nothing to do with you. And the expires date, again, is about the form. It's nothing to do with you or your case. It's about the form itself. So this particular form expires 8/31/2020. That means that they should introduce a new version of the form by that time, right? And they may make changes to the form, they may have a new version of the form, but they're supposed to review it this year in 2020. The estimated burden on these forms is how long you're expected to have to spend to fill in this form. In this case, the burden is 4.5 hours. It's quite a lot. They are acknowledging that it's an expensive form in terms of your time to fill in here. It's a complicated form, yes, but if you go through step by step, question by question, as I've shown you here, really you should be able to get this form completed within a reasonable amount of time, and certainly less than that 4.5 hours. If you just go through calmly and just answer every question truthfully, really, how hard could that be? So go ahead and do that, but don't worry about these bits of data at the top. It's nothing to do with you. And it doesn't matter whether you spend more time or less time in terms of the estimated burden. That's just an assessment of how long they think it's going to take. They're required to justify the amount of the burden of documentary process they enforce on people, and so they're having to justify why they're asking you to spend 4.5 hours on filling in this form, and that's why they've got the burden estimated there. It may change in later versions. Okay, so that's the form. I hope that was helpful. Please go through that. Be careful with that. I'm expecting, as I say, I expect people to be asked for this form more and more. I do expect people to also be asked for the I-134 still. So you are not, DV cases do not fill in the I-864, but they can fill in the I-134. Which is a form. It's the older version of the Affidavit of Support. It really shows there's someone in America who is prepared to help you with your initial expenses and your difficulties in arriving to America. It's a form filled out by a supporter in America. And so that form is still going to be used even though this form covers the financial aspects of your own setup. But clearly, if you've come from Ethiopia, where, let's say wages are a lot lower than they are in the USA, your numbers are not going to be that impressive, and you may not have gained very much in terms of savings. So you may need someone in the USA to help you with the initial expenses. And so, you should also be preparing that form. So I'm suggesting you go to the interview with the I-134 prepared and this DS-5540, this new form. Go to the interview with that already. Okay. All right. Well, that covers it. Uh, Please look out for the other video about this topic, which will be describing the thinking behind this form and the way that they will assess this form and what the COs will do with it. So have a look out for that one. I'll be publishing that one within a day or two, so you can look for that as well. And I'll put the link when I've done that. I'll link in the description below to that other video. So these two are sort of part one and part two of the same topic. All right. Okay. Bye bye now.